Hey guys, welcome back to another video of Learn Xd with me Aditya. In today's tutorial, we'll be learning how to design a basic login or a sign up screen for any mobile application. This will be our first video tutorial where we are going to start off with the designing using Adobe Xd. For today's tutorial, I'll be using Android mobile ad board. So there you go, our new project is ready. This is where we are going to design all our elements. So when it comes to login screen design or a sign up screen design, what we are going to basically do is design a form. So for the login screen, it is going to be the login form, and for the sign up screen, it is going to be the sign up form. I'm going to import the logo. You can go to the menu and select import and import the logo you need. So I've imported my logo, as you can see. Hold down shift and alt and resize the logo. The next thing I want to say is, before starting design, make sure you rename your artboards so that you can easily keep track of where you are designing. When you are working on a project which has multiple screens, it is tough to identify which artboard for what screen. So make sure you rename your artboards. I'm going to do that here. So renaming part is done and my logo is in place. This logo is of a Chennai-based group called Trues. They promote indie music by organizing music jams and open mics over the weekends at cafes around Chennai. I'll provide their Instagram and Facebook page links down in the description. Do check them out. The next thing we are going to do is design the form. So for the form, there are two things that we need, basically the form field and the button. For designing the form field, I'm going to use the rectangle tool. Take your rectangle tool, you can select it from the toolbar that is on the left side of your screen, or you can use your keyboard shortcut, which is R, and drag out the form field. So the form field size dimensions I'm going to use is width 250 pixels and height 40 pixels. This is going to be my form field dimension. So my first form field is in place. The next thing I'm going to do is label this form so that the user can know what they have to put in that particular field. Label is an important thing when it comes to designing a form. You can't just put out a form field because it is going to create a doubt in the user's mind. It is going to be ambiguous. It is not going to be clear. So make sure you put in the right label just to indicate the user that that is what the information they have to provide for that particular field. Since this is going to be the username field, I'm going to type in the label, and the size of the label looks way out of proportion. I'm going to resize it, bring it down to 12 pixels, and I'm going to use a font called Railway. The typeface Railway is available on Google Fonts. You can download it and install it for free. And there are also thousands of fonts available there. Do check it out. Google Fonts is a very big font foundry. You can download any font you want from there and use it for free. The font you choose, make sure that it goes with the theme of your project or the feel and look of your project, the application you're working on. And also try to minimize the number of fonts that you are working to. Don't exceed more than that, because the more number of options you have and put it on screen, the less consistent it is going to be. So stick with maximum of 2 fonts and don't go more than that. I'm also going to make this a bit subtle because I am placing it as a placeholder. I don't want it to be too obvious or too prominent. So I'm going to give this a subtle color. So this looks fine. Our first field is in place. This is how any form field on this particular application is going to look like, whether it is the login form or the sign up form, or if it is any other form like the contact form. I'm going to follow the same style, the same dimensions for the form field, and the same character style for the label text. So in the previous video where I gave you an introduction to XD, I talked about a particular thing called assets panel. As you can see, the assets panel is available on the bottom left corner of your window, and you have three sections here: colors, character styles, and components. So since I said this is going to be the consistent form field element for all the form designs that I'm going to do, I'm going to save it as a component, because instead of creating it again from scratch, it is always going to reduce the workflow of your designing process. So how to increase it or how to maximize the workflow of your designing? This is where the assets panel comes into play. As I said, there are three sections: colors, character styles, and components. I'm going to use the section called components here. As I said, this is going to be a component for all the form designs I'm going to do. So the first thing I do is group it, Control G on your keyboard, or you can right click it and hit group. So I've grouped all the elements together. The next thing I'm going to do is hit the plus icon you can see here, and it is added. I'm going to rename this as form field, so that again I can easily identify the component I need. In the login form, we are going to have two fields. One is for the username and the other one is for the password. I need another field here. I can do it three ways. I can either create it from scratch, which is going to reduce my workflow, or I can duplicate this field by holding down Alt and dragging it down, or I can drag it from the components window onto the screen, just like this, and place it wherever I need. So now when in the screen there is an already existing form field present, so I can just hold down Alt and drag it wherever I want so that I create a duplicate. But when on a screen where there is no existing form field present, I can use this component section from the assets panel and drag out the component and drop it wherever I need. This is how you increase your workflow, by using the component section or whatever be the section that is available on the assets panel, be it character styles or be it color. And I place it about 16 pixels, let's say 10 will do. So I'm placing it 10 pixels below the username field, and I'm going to rename this as password. So my two form fields are in place, and for the button I'm again going to use the rectangle tool and drag out the button I need. For the button I'm going to leave it at 250 pixels width, same as the form field, and the height is going to be 36 pixels. So this is going to be my button shape. The next thing we are going to do is place the button text. Our button and button text, button shape and button text are ready. This is going to be the basic structure of our button, and I'm going to duplicate this for the sign up. I'm going to use the character style section now. As you can see, we saw how component section works. Now we are going to see how character style section works. I'm going to select the character style that I might need while I'm going to design another screen in the future. So I select the character style I need and hit the plus icon here, or you can right click and select add character styles to asset. Either way, your character style that you selected is going to get added to the character style section, and whenever you want another text to be of the same style, you select the text you need and hit the character style that you need. It transforms everything. When there are two or more buttons on a screen, we must give importance more to the prominent button or to the most important button. Like on a login screen, the prominent button action is going to be login. We want the user to log in from the login screen. But as you see now, both these buttons look the same. There is nothing that differentiates their priority or which one. There is nothing that stresses on the importance of the login button. So how to make the login button look more prominent, or how to make the primary action button look more prominent, how to emphasize more on its importance. So that is what we are going to do. We can either increase the size of the button or we can change the fill. There is a lot of things that you can do and play around with the appearance and make it look more prominent. What I'm going to do here is change the fill of this button. I'm going to make it to this fill, that you see on the text of the logo. I'm using the eyedropper tool here and sampling the color I need. There you go. The color I needed is now on the fill, and I don't need a border here, so I uncheck the border. Now the button is ready with its color. The next thing is here, the button text. It is not as readable as it was, because with a white background and a black text it is easily readable, but with a dark background and a black text it is not readable. So I'm going to again change the fill of the text here. I'm going to make it white. Now it is easily readable. That is another important thing that we have to keep in mind while we are designing any screen. Whenever the text comes into play, whenever you are putting any text on your screen, make sure it is readable and your text must be consistent. The style you are using must be consistent. And this is going to be again the structure, the style for any primary button on my application. So again, I'm going to add this to the component section, and here we talked about we talked a little about how clear the design should be once we started this tutorial. Now I'm going to stress on consistency. When it comes to designing buttons, make sure your button designs have a consistent color scheme. This is a color scheme I'm going to fix with this dark bluish gray color and white. These are the two primary colors that I'm going to use in any button design, be it the primary button or the secondary button. For the primary button, we have already done the designing. Now let's go to the secondary button design. I want this white fill to stay, but I'm going to change the border of this button. So I'm going to again take this eyedropper tool and sample it. You can do using this, or there's another way to do it. For this thing, we are going to use the colors section of the assets panel. As you can see here, we saw the character styles and components. The next thing is color. So as I said, I'm going to use this particular color for applying the fill. So what I'm going to do is select this element, the button shape, and hit the plus. Whatever the color that is applied for this particular button is saved under the color section. If it had a border, it also saves the border color. So we'll be having two colors, the fill color and the border color. Since the border is not present here, it saves only the fill color, which is 2C333D. Again, it increases our workflow. Instead of remembering all the hex codes of all the colors that we are going to use, we just create a color palette using the color section in the assets panel and use it wherever we need. When I select another element and hit on the color, it changes the fill here, but I need just the border of the element to change. So I right click on the color and hit on apply as border, and it only changes the border of the element. But for the text, I need the fill to change, so I select the text and hit on the color and it changes the fill. So now the color scheme for the button looks consistent, and this is going to be the secondary button style for our application. So what I'm going to do is again create a component. A new component is created. Now our form field and buttons are ready. The next thing we are going to do is add two more buttons, because in the recent times we saw every application that is coming out comes with an additional option of alternative login actions. You can either log in using your Google account, or you can log in using your social media account like Facebook or Twitter. So that is the next thing we are going to design. We are going to design two more buttons, one for Google login and one for logging in using your Facebook account. The login screen design is done. The next thing we are going to do is design the sign up screen. Now I've also completed with the sign up screen design. So both our screen designs are ready. The next thing we are going to do is prototype. We have completed the design part. We are going to jump into prototype. We'll jump into prototype now. So this is where all the magic is going to happen. We are going to we are going to create a simple prototype here where the user, when they click on the sign up button, it takes them to the sign up screen, and when they click on the login button, it takes them back to the login screen. So this is the prototype which we are going to do today in today's tutorial. So you select the button, which is the sign up button here, and you can see a blue arrow that comes out of this element. I'm going to drag it to the artboard which I need, because when they click on the sign up button, this is where I want them to go. And you see a set of options here. Trigger is something that triggers the action. You have 4 triggers here: tap, drag, voice, and keys and gamepad. This is a trigger that was introduced in the last update, the May update of Adobe Xd. Let's try out all these triggers in the future tutorials once we start creating complex prototypes. So we'll stick with tap here, and the action is going to be transition. We are going to go from one artboard to another artboard. We can also see a lot of other actions are available here: auto animate, overlay, speech playback, or previous artboard. Again, we have to stick to the basics here, so I'm going to stick with transition, and the destination is the destination artboard. Here it is sign up, and the animation is dissolve. You can try out all these different animations available, like you can try the slide animations or the push animations. I'm going to stick with dissolve here and make this easing as ease in, ease out. And I'm going to leave the duration at 0.3 seconds. This is going to be a prototype wire from the sign up button to the sign up screen. We are going to create another wire from the login button to the login screen. So now our prototype is ready. You see a play button here on the top right corner. So this is going to be the preview button. When you hit it, a preview window pops up. This is how your design will look when it is deployed on a mobile one. Once the application development is done and it is running on a mobile device, this is how your design is going to look like. All these form fields and buttons. When you hit on the sign up button, it takes you to the sign up screen, and when you hit on the login button, it takes you back to the login screen. So we did a basic designing here, and we prototype the basic design.